All right, let's take a look at the informative essay. Now, this is some information about the informative essay that's posted on Ivy Learn for You. And just want to take a quick look at this so that you kind of have a sense of what the essay is about. So, first off, let's just keep in mind what we're trying to do is inform others, right? We want to make the audience more educated and smarter about a topic. So, let's talk about the first steps is picking that topic. Okay. So, what topic can you pick? Well, you should start with something that you're already interested in. We know that anytime that you have a topic that you are interested in, it's going to be easier for you to write. Some of the hardest essays that you might have had to write over the years are ones where you were given this topic. It really didn't have any connection to you. You weren't interested in it. You didn't know anything about it, right? And you just kind of had to slog through it. Well, if you're interested in the topic or you already know a lot about the topic, then you're going to do better with it. You have a better starting point, okay? Now, you should always follow the guidelines. I mean, obviously, look at the assignment and what you are being asked to do by the teacher, right? Because you don't want to start off down the wrong path, okay? And then obviously make sure that anything you decide to pick does meet any of those criterias. The next thing you should be thinking about, and again, we've talked about this before, is figure out what you already know about the topic and then do additional research to fill in those gaps, okay? So you want to say, okay, here's what I know. I need to explore these kinds of areas. I need to pull in this information. Now, any information that you get, no matter what that information is or why you're including it, it must come from a variety of credible sources that are going to back you up, but they are sources that the audience, the reader, will trust, okay? For this paper, you're going to use a minimum of 3 credible sources. That's a standard number. I think a lot of times when you get a paper assignment from a teacher in any of your classes, 3 is going to be a pretty general number that you're going to have to use. One of the things that we talk about with the audience is that you are you have to keep your intended audience in mind, right? And you match the writing to that situation. It has to be suitable for that audience. And so what we want to do is we want to maintain a professional tone. For all of our main papers now, no I, no first person, no I, me, my, our, we, none of those, okay? Because that's too casual. That's way too casual. We want to keep it third person, okay? We want to keep it broad. We want to keep it out of that casual area. Also, you should avoid to. You should also avoid you. You don't want to be talking to like you're talking to a person across a kitchen table or anything. So we want to avoid the first and the second person. If there is a time that you feel like you must use one of those casual persons, then limit it only to either the introduction or the conclusion. But again, I think you should really avoid it if at all possible. When we talk about the introduction, this is setting the stage for your report. You're setting the stage. You're setting those expectations for your reader, right? You're stating the main idea, okay? You're getting our attention, right? And your audience should not have to guess what this is about. They should not have to wonder about what you're going to be talking about. Now, the informative paper is rather narrow and it's objective, but when we talk about like different, some of our other ones, like our causal analysis, rhetorical analysis, or our persuasive papers, we also want to give our position too, right? Like, where are we coming from? The audience should never be guessing. For the informative paper, we want to state the main idea. We want to focus your investigation and give that thesis so that the audience knows exactly what they're getting ready to experience. The body of the paper, all those middle paragraphs, right? Background information on what we call those reporter questions, the who, the what, the where, the when, the why, the how. You want to make sure that your readers have all the information they need to fully better understand this topic. Okay? And then we get to the conclusion and we're wrapping it up. We're reiterating the most important points. You're tying up loose ends. One thing you do not do is you do not bring in a new topic. You do not bring in a new piece of information that you have not talked about at all in your paper. That's not what the conclusion is, because you're wrapping up the paper and throwing out something new. Your reader will be confused, right? So you don't want them to get off at the end of the paper and think that there's still more, that there's something additional to be reading about, right? Um, I one of the things sometimes people ask me about how can they do a good conclusion, or how to think, how can I formulate a good conclusion? One of the things I think you can think about when it comes to the conclusion is it's your last parting shot. This is the last chance you get to say something to the audience. I know sometimes you hear people will say, "Hey, if you take nothing else from this, this is something you should have." Okay. I don't know if you have to necessarily say it like that. I don't think I would say it like that. But I think that would be a good way of thinking about it, because this is your parting shot. And if there's nothing else the audience takes away from this is the last thing they're going to hear from you, hit that main point again. Make sure that they fully understand and remember that last piece. Now, when it comes to source material, those credible sources that you're going to have to really help the audience understand the topic, okay? We want to talk about integrating these sources, and we do that by summarizing, paraphrasing, and quoting. Now, quote is when you take one or two sentences. In general, these are general guidelines, not absolutes, but a quote is one or two sentences long, and it is in quotation marks, and it's followed by a citation. And these are best used to let some expert talk in your paper. So most of us, the vast majority of us, are not experts in our area, are not experts in the topic that we're writing about. But these outside experts, they are. So when we use a quote, it's like they're talking directly to the reader. Can be very powerful. And if they're credible, really adds a lot of weight and a lot of authority to what you're saying. Paraphrasing is like taking someone else's words, thoughts, and ideas and then putting them in your own. It's like you're digesting someone else's words, thoughts, and ideas and giving them to the reader in a way that's a little easier for them to understand. One of the things I talk about, one of the examples I use is go west down this street versus turning left onto the street. It's the same direction, right? If west was on the left side, it's the same direction. Some people will understand left, some people understand west. And so what you want to do then is you want to find the language that your reader is going to understand. And then you're going to take this information and you're going to use that language to give it to them. Paraphrasing generally can be maybe 3-4 sentences in length, will be followed by a citation. And then a summary takes a large piece of work, like an essay, a novel, a movie, a documentary, something, and it boils it down to a paragraph of the main points. Now, you will not have a citation with this necessarily, but you will probably in the first sentence, say where this comes from, like according to whatever book or according to whatever novel, documentary, video clip, or whatever, right? This is where you just give the big, broad brushstrokes of something. Now, we talked about this before, just as a refresher. When you think about your audience, what do they know? What do they need to know? And then what are they interested in? That's kind of helping you define that audience. And then what language will be the most appropriate for them? Now, we've talked about all this before, so that should be nothing new. Some things to think about when it comes to language, though: being clear, being concise, being direct with the audience, and being very careful that you're not using jargon. And a lot of times this could be a problem if you know a lot about the topic already, because it's hard to remember what other people don't know, because it's such a part of you and it's like the thing you know the most about, that it's hard for you to stop and say, okay, wait a minute, is this something that only people in the know would know, or is this general knowledge? And so you really want to make sure that you don't overfill your paper with jargon that your audience may not understand. Now, this is an informative paper, so we are going to be objective. Okay, we do not take sides, we do not judge, we do not editorialize on these. Now, that said, it is obvious that if you are talking about a particular thing, you are, in essence, giving a little bit of persuasion, right, or a little bit of bias to a side, because you're sharing a certain piece. So we want to try to present as many different sides as possible, if those are applicable, if that's necessary, okay? If you do include other people's judgments or other people's take on something, then make sure that you state it as such. Some people say this, or this person says this, right? We don't want it to imply or read like you are suggesting or promoting that position. You can present opposing viewpoints, but we just don't want to argue for one side versus the other. We do need to be accurate. We do need to be accurate because trust is a big thing. When we talk about educating your audience or persuading your audience or giving information to your audience, it's all about the amount of trust. It's all about how much they trust you. And if you lose that trust, if you've broken that trust, it's so hard to get it back. And at some point, your audience, if they question what you're talking about, what you're sharing with them, then they will question everything you share with them. And everything that you've written will be suspect. And so you really want to keep that trust. How do you do that? You back up your information and use lots and lots of variety of credible sources. In the end, one of the things that we like to say is that this is a report. It's a window. It's a glance into something, right? We're giving the reader a view of this. Obviously, the metaphor of looking through a window works, but it also, does have some limitations that we don't get to see everything. They're not experiencing it. They're not in there with it, right? And that they are looking through a window. They are looking through a filter in a way. So there are some things to kind of keep in mind like that. But again, we're giving people a look at a topic, okay? The slideshow goes on to talk about some of the different types of essays, of informative essays. The book talks about these different types. And one of the things that I would just like to, just to wrap up with this is that, feel free to take a look at those and kind of get a sense of the different types. But remember that a lot of these, you will use more than one of these at a time. You might have some description. You're going to use some exemplification. You might have to define something. You might compare and contrast some things to define something. So there's a lot of times where you might do several different types of these papers at once. But in the end, if you if I could summarize this in one word or in one sentence, it's the fact that informative essays are meant to make the audience smarter about the topic. And if you can do that, then you have done your job and met your purpose.